She showed up, with green hair, a clipboard, and the audacity to blame me, for her swamp-colored meltdown. HOA. Karen didn't know I was a water chemist. Now their hair's turning green. Part 1. The hair, the clipboard, and the beginning of war. It started, like most neighborhood chaos does, with a knock that didn't wait to be answered. I was mid-sip on my morning coffee, hazelnut, just right, when I heard it. 3 sharp raps. Too aggressive, too confident, the kind of knock that doesn't ask permission. It demands an audience. I opened the door, and there she was, Karen, HOA president, clipboard commander, arbiter of grass height and mailbox paint tone. But this time, something was off. Her sunglasses sat crooked on her nose, her ponytail looked like it had been electrocuted, and her hair, oh dear chemistry. Her hair was green, not the fun street Patty's Day green. This was swamp witch meets radioactive kelp, and she looked livid. "You!" she shouted, pointing at me like I had personally cursed her lineage. "Your pool did this!" She stepped forward, flipping her clipboard open like it had divine authority, and thrust a printed photo toward my face. It was a picture of her hair, zoomed in. It looked worse in high resolution. "This is copper exposure," she hissed. "I Googled it, and all signs point to you." I blinked. "Karen, I haven't touched the community pool." "Oh, I know," she snapped. "That's what makes this even more suspicious." Margaret the cat rubbed against my ankle, clearly unimpressed. I stared at Karen for a long moment, then slowly sipped my coffee. Because while she saw chaos, I saw opportunity. See, I'm not just some guy with a backyard pool. I'm a certified water chemist, 3 degrees, 12 years in the field, and a very expensive testing kit that I use the way some people use yoga, for peace, clarity, and precision. Karen didn't know that, but she was about to, because her clipboard war just declared open season on my turf, and in the battle between HOA Rules and the periodic table, I put my money on chemistry. Part 2, the report, the red ink, and the rise of petty chemistry. Karen didn't waste time. 2 days after the green hair incident, I found an envelope taped to my mailbox. HOA seal stamped dead center like it had been approved by Congress. Inside, a formal request, correction, a demand. Submit a full chemical breakdown of your pool water within 48 hours. Failure to comply may result in disciplinary review. Classic Karen. The complaint attached was gold. Apparently, multiple residents had raised concerns over the unnatural shimmer of my pool, suspicious clarity, and, I kid you not, water that looks like it belongs in a laboratory, not a backyard. I chuckled. They were right, on all counts. But if Karen wanted a report, I'd give her one. I didn't just test my water. I crafted an opus. 10 glorious pages. Charts, graphs, annotated test logs, breakdowns of free chlorine, total chlorine, pH levels, alkalinity, calcium hardness, cyanuric acid ratios, and even a Langelier saturation index graph plotted over 30 days. I bound it. I color-coded it. I even added a quote to the front page. "In water, as in life, balance is everything." 2 days later, it came back. Karen had returned it, marked up, in red pen, giant circles, sloppy arrows. And across the front, scrawled in Sharpie, "Too technical. Simplify. Normal people don't use words like chelation." That was my villain origin story. She didn't want facts. She wanted control. So I pivoted. I grabbed a bottle of copper-based algicide, a totally legal, commonly used, perfectly harmless compound. Unless you overbleach your hair and ignore the calcium hardness of your water. I adjusted just enough to my personal pool. Nowhere near the community pool. That part's important. Because, see, in soft water, trace copper binds to porous, color-treated strands. The result? Green. Not immediately, but after a few good dips in your friend's spa or sitting too close to a breeze from the wrong pool. Let's just say, Karen had already done most of the work for me with that bleached job. I didn't sabotage, I didn't even step foot near her turf. I just let chemistry do its thing, and waited. Part 3. The poolside parade of leprechauns. Saturday arrived, with a calm sky, chirping birds, and the kind of ominous silence that only happens before a neighborhood implosion. I was trimming the hedges when it began. The first shriek rang out from the direction of the community clubhouse, then another, and another. By the time I stepped out front, coffee in hand, a full-blown commotion had broken out on the clubhouse patio. Karen and her HOA loyalists, 5 women, all usually dressed like catalog models for suburban dominance, were in full meltdown. Hair dyed in various shades of disaster. Karen's was the worst, a neon swamp green, the kind of color that looked less like a dye job and more like she'd dunked her head in radioactive pesto. Pam, clipboard number 2 in command, had streaks of lime woven into her platinum blonde, screaming, "This isn't even my natural color." Another woman shouted, "It's spreading!" I shampooed twice. Karen spun in place like she was trying to see the back of her own head. "I told you it was him!" she shrieked. Someone dropped a phone. A man from across the street came out just to film it. I stood by my mailbox, sipping slowly, nodding as if watching a nature documentary. Karen caught sight of me and marched. She stomped across the lawn like a woman possessed by chlorinated rage. Dripping wet. Clip-clopping in soggy wedges. Hair still foaming with what I assumed was anti-frizz emergency mousse. She didn't knock. She didn't greet. She just pointed and yelled, "You! You're behind this!" I blinked, then looked behind me, then back at her. "Me?" I said. "I thought you said I was too technical to trust." Her voice cracked. "You poisoned the community pool." I raised an eyebrow. "I haven't touched the community pool, Karen. I only care for mine." She went pale, then flushed red. Her eyes narrowed to slits. "If I find out you've been tampering—" "Karen," I cut in, "my pool is on my property. Maybe what you need is a little water education." She gasped like I'd offered her a handbook on how to smile. "This isn't over," she hissed, then spun on her heel, hair slapping her in the face mid-turn, and stormed off toward the HOA building. And me? I went back inside, chuckling softly. Because while Karen was declaring war with a wet clipboard, I already had science on my side. Later that afternoon, my Ring doorbell captured something glorious. 3 HOA members, soaked, frazzled, and green-streaked, arguing outside the clubhouse door. "You said he was dumping stuff," Pam shouted. "I said maybe," Karen barked back. A third woman pointed to her ends. "They're crunchy. My hair's crunchy, Karen." I watched the footage 5 times, saved it, titled the file, Leprechaun Rebellion Final.mp4. And that night, when I turned on the pool lights, I made sure they glowed just a little greener than usual. Part 4. The turkey baster, the test, and the smirk she couldn't stand. I figured that would be the end of it. But no. Karen doesn't retreat. She reloads. The next morning, I caught movement through the slats in my fence. A shadow, low, sneaky, clipboard-shaped. I stepped outside and spotted her deputy, Pam, crouched beside my backyard fence, holding something that looked suspiciously like a turkey baster. I froze, then tilted my head. "You doing holiday prep early this year?" Pam jumped like I'd yelled salmonella. She stumbled back, clutching the baster like it was evidence in a murder trial. I'm collecting samples, she stammered. With kitchen utensils? I asked. She bolted, didn't even pretend to be casual about it. Later that day, an official letter arrived, hand-delivered by a teenager in flip-flops and an HOA cap that was too big for his head. Mandatory water review initiated. It was stamped like a government document, but smelled like cinnamon gum. Apparently, Karen had convinced the board to authorize a surprise visual inspection of all private pools, for safety, of course. I made preparations. I scrubbed my pH meter, polished my laminated chlorine logs, set out a tray of lemon bars labeled not poisoned. When the inspection team, Karen, Pam, with a fresh baster holstered like a sidearm and a reluctant Phil, arrived at my gate, I greeted them in full lab coat. Karen looked like she'd just bit into a lemon wedge. "State your purpose," I said, deadpan. She shoved a clipboard in my direction. "We're testing for contamination." Phil looked embarrassed. Pam tried to dip the baster. I handed her a sterile test tube. "Try this. It won't melt under UV light." They poked, they peered, they whispered. Then Phil ran the strip, waited, squinted. "This is cleaner than bottled water," he mumbled. Karen glared at him like he'd committed treason. I offered her a lemon bar. She didn't take it. "You're hiding something," she said. I smiled. "Of course I am." Knowledge, she stormed off. Again. This time, she left muddy flip-flop prints on my walkway, and a trail of pure frustration. Part 5. The misting schedule and the chlorine that broke her. Karen might have stormed off, but she didn't disappear. She pivoted. The new accusation, airborne contamination. Yep, you heard that right. She was now telling neighbors that my pool was releasing a chemical aura into the breeze, a vapor cloud of doom that could turn hair green on contact. One neighbor stopped me while I was bringing in groceries. "Hey, Karen says we should stay upwind of your filter pump. Is that real?" I just blinked, then offered him a lemon bar. So I made a decision. If she wanted paranoia, I'd give her a reason. I adjusted my pool's misting schedule, timed it down to the second. Every day, right as Karen passed by on her morning route, sneakers squeaking, clipboard in hand, the mist would hiss on. A soft cloud of harmless vapor, just chlorinated enough to smell dramatic. The first time, she yelped and covered her hair with her clipboard. The second time, she waved her phone like she was filming a gas leak. By the third time, she was walking on the opposite side of the street. So naturally, I added props. A lawn chair angled perfectly toward the sidewalk, a book left out titled The Chemistry of Control, and a new mug. #1 suspect, HOA's Most Wanted. The next HOA board update included this gem. Residents are strongly encouraged to avoid prolonged exposure to external mists of unknown composition. No names mentioned. But the font choice screamed, Karen. I laminated it, taped it to the front of my mailbox like a badge of honor. By now, half the neighborhood was in on the joke. Some wore shower caps as a bit when walking past my fence. One kid tossed green confetti over his mom's head and shouted, "I've been exposed!" Karen? She doubled down, started wearing a sun hat the size of a satellite dish, and began whispering to people that I had invented psychological pool warfare. Honestly, I kind of had, but not with chemicals, with precision, with timing, with style. Then came her boldest move yet. She showed up during one of my quiet Saturday mornings, clipboard free for once, but still radiating suspicion. She stood by my fence, arms crossed. "I've read about chlorine mist. It can affect mood," she said flatly. I stared at her. Karen, are you accusing me of mood manipulation with mist? She nodded, then added, My dog hasn't wagged his tail in a week. I tried not to laugh. Truly I did. But somewhere in the distance, a neighbor's sprinkler clicked on, and I lost it. Karen, I said, catching my breath, if your dog's depressed, it might be because he lives in a neighborhood run by fear and not facts. She turned, slowly, and walked away. That day, I renamed my filter timer, Operation Cheer Up Karen's Dog. Part 6, the workshop invitation, and the chlorine mic drop. With paranoia now fully weaponized, Karen escalated to Phase 3, community-wide panic. She posted flyers, actual printed flyers, titled, The Greening, a Neighborhood Crisis. They featured pixelated photos of hair samples, blurry screenshots of my pool mist, and a red arrow pointing to my house with the words, Known Zone of Unconfirmed Activity. One neighbor folded it into an origami frog. Another taped it to their trash bin under the word recycle. Me? I framed it. And then I sent invitations. Handwritten. Elegant cardstock. Gold-trimmed. Pool Chemistry 101. An HOA-sanctioned learning event. Snacks included. I hand-delivered them to every board member. Even slid one under Karen's door, taped to a bottle of clarifying shampoo. Only 2 showed up, Phil and Sandy. Karen, of course, was a no-show. Rumor had it she believed I'd set up a chemical ambush using colored vapor and subliminal bubbles. I welcomed the others warmly, had lemon bars ready, plus laminated test kits. I taught them the difference between total chlorine and free chlorine, demonstrated proper backwash technique, and handed out a cheat sheet titled, How to Tell the Difference Between Pool Science and Panic. Phil was fascinated. Sandy took notes like she was preparing for finals. Then came the highlight of the session, a copper ion demo using synthetic hair swatches. When the green tint appeared, both Phil and Sandy gasped. Phil whispered, It's real. I smiled. By the end, Sandy said, You should teach high school chemistry. Phil nodded. Or run this HOA. I laughed. Let's not go that far. I like sleeping. That night, Sandy posted to the HOA board. Attended Pool Chemistry 101, 10 out of 10. Would recommend. No threats detected. Water, pristine. Karen's reply came in Sharpie on a post-it note, stuck below. Do not be fooled. I added it to my collection, right beside the flyer with the red arrow. Because while she was trying to rewrite the rules, I was writing the next chapter, and it smelled faintly of chlorine and victory. Part 7. The Chlorine Whisperer and the Fall of a Queen. After the workshop, things shifted. Sandy became a quiet ambassador of pool sanity. Phil started sending me memes of lab beakers and pool noodles. The neighborhood, once silent and suspicious, now walked past my fence with smirks and questions. Hey, is it true chlorine can smell fear? Did you really make Karen's hair change color with science? Can you test our water too, just in case? Karen, meanwhile, dug in. She started a newsletter, printed in Comic Sans, the Green Sentinel. The first issue had one article, written entirely in caps lock, titled, Neighborhood Toxins and How to Spot a Chlorine Cult. She included a low-res image of my pool, filtered to look like it glowed. Someone pinned it to the clubhouse corkboard. Someone else drew a cartoon duck on it with green hair. Karen responded by proposing an emergency board vote. All private water features must be inspected weekly for signs of chemical manipulation and unauthorized atmospheric discharge. Phil nearly snorted coffee through his nose. That's not a pool, he said. That's a weather balloon now? The vote failed. Hard. That night, someone anonymously left a gift basket at my door. Inside, a green wig, a bath bomb, and a card that said, "Thanks for keeping it clean." I kept the card. Margaret claimed the basket. Karen? She began walking the long way around the block, avoided the clubhouse, avoided eye contact, avoided the truth. But the rest of the neighborhood? They started living again, swimming, hosting barbecues, leaving flamingos on their lawns just to see if she'd notice. She didn't. Not anymore. Because her power wasn't clipped by chemicals. It was dissolved. One molecule of laughter, one test strip of fact at a time. Part 8. The Science Fair. That set her off with Karen's reign unraveling and her newsletter barely surviving 2 print runs, I decided to raise the stakes gently. It started with a few kids asking if I could do some cool experiments like I did in the workshop. Their parents joined in, and soon enough, we had a plan. I printed posters, bright green, cartoon beakers, a smiling chlorine molecule. Neighborhood Science Day, experiments, lemon bars, and water that behaves. We set up stations, dry ice fog over the kiddie pool, color-changing pH strips, a copper ion demo in a glass tank. And of course, the infamous hair test strip, just for laughs. The turnout? Massive. Kids ran wild with goggles and baking soda. Parents lounged in lawn chairs sipping lemonade. Someone brought a Bluetooth speaker and played "She Blinded Me with Science." And Karen? She showed up halfway through, from across the street. Dressed in a full-body windbreaker suit, goggles, umbrella, and a surgical mask. She stood there, holding up her phone, filming like she was about to catch a war crime. One kid waved at her. She flinched. Then, without warning, she yelled, "This is an unauthorized chemical demonstration!" Everyone paused. A beat of silence. Then one little girl leaned toward her dad and asked, "Is she okay?" Karen marched up to the edge of the lawn, but never crossed the property line, and declared, "I'm filing an environmental alert report to the HOA Safety Subcommittee." Phil, lounging in a folding chair, raised a cup and said, "Cheers, Karen." The crowd laughed. Karen didn't. Later that night, I received a typed notice, unsigned, of course, titled R.E., Irresponsible Use of Visual Chemistry to Influence Public Perception. I laminated it, hung it next to my framed chlorine pH curve, because while Karen kept trying to fight with fear, the neighborhood had already chosen curiosity, and cookies, and maybe just a little dry ice. Part 9. The vote, the collapse, and the final splash. 2 days after the science fair, the HOA called an emergency meeting. The flyer said urgent community business. But we all knew what it meant. Karen had pushed too far. The folding chairs were set up in neat rows. Lemonade in the corner. A suspicious lack of clipboards. I showed up in flip-flops. And a t-shirt that read, "Neutral pH, High Drama." Karen arrived late, wearing a trench coat and tinted glasses, like she was dodging paparazzi. She carried a binder labeled Exposure, a timeline. She marched to the front of the room, cleared her throat, and launched into a 14-slide PowerPoint presentation titled Neighborhood Destabilization, Chemical Disrespect in Suburbia. Slide 1, a blurry image of my pool. Slide 2, her own green-tinted hair with the words, Victim 0. Slide 3, a clip art mushroom cloud. I nearly choked on my lemon square. Phil whispered, "Did she just compare chlorine to nuclear fallout?" Karen slammed her binder shut. I moved to censure the resident of Lot 17. Effective immediately. Restriction of pool activity, daily mist monitoring, mandatory water log submitted for review. Sandy raised a hand. "Do you have Any evidence? Karen stiffened. I have instincts and lived experience. The room went quiet. Then someone coughed. Someone else giggled. Then Phil stood up. I move to vote on Karen's removal as HOA president. Hands shot up, not one against. Karen looked around, jaw slack, eyes wide, clipboard trembling. She muttered something about bylaws, sabotage, revenge, then turned and walked out. No applause, no resistance. Just the soft squeak of sensible flats on linoleum tile. The room exhaled. Greg, newly elected by silent agreement, picked up her binder, flipped it open, and held up a slide. It was a photo of my pool, sparkling, serene. Honestly, he said, it looks pretty great. Everyone nodded. Then someone asked, so, can we actually throw a pool party again? Greg grinned. Only if he lets us borrow the lemon bars. Laughter filled the room. Even Phil clapped slowly, raising his lemonade in mock salute. Balance. At last. But even as the chairs were folded up and people spilled into the evening air, I couldn't help but glance down the sidewalk. And there she was. Karen. Standing just far enough away to be out of frame. Watching. Not storming, not screaming, just watching. And for the first time since this whole thing began, she looked small. Not defeated, not broken, just a little less certain. Part 10. The exit interview and the chlorine that stayed. Karen didn't return that night. No door slamming, no clipboard clacking, no flyers duct taped to community signs. For the first time in months, the street was still. The next morning, I stepped out to water the azaleas and saw something odd. A white envelope taped to my mailbox. No HOA seal, no stamps. Just a single word scribbled across the front. Truce. Inside was a one-line note, typed. Science wins, but don't push your luck. No signature, no threats, just that. I pinned it next to my laminated pH chart, right between the Do Not Be Fooled post-it and my framed lemon bar recipe. Later that day, I saw Karen, walking. No clipboard, no sunglasses, no entourage. She passed by my house slowly, paused at the edge of the lawn, and for the first time, she nodded. Just once, then kept going. That evening, Greg called a casual meeting. No agenda, just community pizza under string lights at the clubhouse lawn. People came in sandals. Kids played tag around the shrubs. Someone brought out a karaoke machine. Phil sang a slow, off-key version of Under Pressure. Nobody judged him. It was perfect. We talked fences, laughed about bylaws. Someone suggested creating an official HOA cookbook. I was asked to run a booth for the upcoming summer block party. Can you do a demo? Phil chimed in. Only if there's mist, Sandy added, and lemon bars. I grinned. Deal, but only if someone brings safety goggles. Margaret the cat napped by the cooler, unbothered. Then Greg stood and raised his cup. To chemistry, the kind that keeps the water clear, and the neighbors closer. Everyone cheered. Even Karen, from a distance, raised her bottle of sparkling water. The war was over. The pool stayed clean. And the neighborhood, it finally felt human again. Because in the end, when panic meets precision and paranoia meets pH balance, only one can float. Part 11. The return to normal, and the legend that lingers. The following weeks felt like coming up for air. No more megaphones, no more flyers, no turkey basters sneaking through fence slats, just the sound of sprinklers in the morning, kids splashing in pools without fear of green hair, and neighbors waving again unironically. People started decorating again, real decorations, flamingos, gnomes, flags with puns, things Karen used to fine people for. Now, she walked past them and didn't even flinch. Greg turned out to be a good HOA president. Fair, friendly, slightly obsessed with recycled mulch, but otherwise solid. He even stopped by once with a peace offering, a 6-pack of seltzer and a new mug that said, "Neighborhood Alchemist." Margaret approved. As for Karen, she didn't vanish, didn't move, didn't even stop walking her route. But she had softened. The clipboard was gone. So was the fanny pack of doom. She still wore those giant sunglasses, but now they just looked like sunglasses. One morning, I caught her pausing by my gate again. She didn't say anything, just stared at the pool. I raised my coffee. She gave me half a smile. That was it. That was everything. Because she finally realized something. Science wasn't the enemy. It was the lifeguard. And me? I was just the guy with the cleanest water on the block. The guy who knew the difference between fear and facts. The guy who never needed to fight dirty, because he could just let the chlorine speak for itself. And the neighborhood? It remembered. It laughed. It healed. It floated. Epilogue. The echo of clean water months passed. Summer bled into fall, and the laughter stuck around. The story of Karen versus chemistry became the kind of tale that got told at barbecues, over backyard fences, and whispered like a legend at HOA meetings. People still pointed at my pool and joked, "Don't get too close or your eyebrows might turn green." Kids asked me to make bubbles like last time. Someone made t-shirts that said, "Trust the chlorine." One neighbor even named their goldfish Algae Karen. But beneath the jokes was something real. A shift. A new kind of calm. A community that learned how to question, how to laugh, and how to let go of control that never belonged to them in the first place. Karen started gardening. Quietly. Mostly succulents. She waves now. Sometimes. And once. She asked if I could test her bird bath, just out of curiosity. I did. The water was fine. So was she. 2 weeks later, she left a little package on my doorstep, wrapped in brown paper, tied with twine. Inside, a small ceramic frog, holding a sign that read, "Let it flow." No note, but I understood. And maybe the best part? At the next community block party, the first in 2 years, someone made a punch called Chlorinated. It was lime green, bubbly, and only half serious. Karen drank it. She even laughed. Later, she asked me if I had any book recommendations about water stuff, but like the friendly kind. I lent her one. She returned it with Post-its. As for me, I still test my pool every other day, still log every result, still smile when the pH holds steady like a heartbeat. Because balance isn't just for water, it's for life. And in this little corner of suburbia, chlorine won the war. Science told the truth. And Karen learned how to float. And the neighborhood? It remembered. It grew. It laughed. It finally exhaled.